The floor is yours.
Let's see, we have a lot of material for you guys.
Yeah. So very warm welcome from my side too. Can you switch the first slide? So this is a very different color in here than what we see here. So
Name is right, face is wrong now.
So you work as SVP for Bertelsmann. Can you explain us a little bit what actually Bertelsmann is and what do they do? I think not everybody in the room knows about that.
Happy to do so. So from a high-level view, Bertelsmann is a global media services and education company. And within these areas, there are maybe some more brands you know directly. So out of the media part, the RTL Group, for example, Penguin Random House is the biggest book publisher in the world. BMG, I think, is the 4th largest music publisher. We have a large IT services, logistic and financial service branch with the Avato Group, marketing, printing services, a large education branch, and also notably Bertelsmann Invest. Bertelsmann has a turnover of 20 billion yearly, 80,000 employees. So quite a big company. The biggest market for Bertelsmann till this year is actually the US, specifically driven by growth in the education sector. So we have a wide breadth of companies, business models, and stuff like that. So these topics are quite important to us. From a group strategy, we have a target portfolio in terms of expanding and growing our business, specifically into digital, innovative, and diversified businesses. Along the lines of the portfolio companies that you have seen, specifically national media champions, global content with Random House and things like that, services, education, and obviously investing. And in terms of enablers at the group level, it's naturally ESG, people, and communication. But one core pillar of the growth strategy is technology and data at the highest level.
So with that said, with this diverse amount of businesses with probably very different data assets, and how to get to a point where you have a common data strategy and an AI strategy, what can you do around that?
Yeah, so to actually cope with that and to leverage that opportunity, around 29, we established a corporate-wide technology and data advisory board. That is the old graphic from a couple of years ago, which was focusing firstly on exchanging what are new technologies that can help expand or grow or get into new business areas, what expertise do we have available around technology and data across the whole company, and how can actually bring data assets, which assets are available, and how can they support growth and sustaining businesses to actually drive new use cases. And the strategy there was to find actually enablers that we actually need to look into from the corporate level to support the different divisions jointly with them to bringing things forward. So that's where we started in 2019. And then from there it went, right? I think not a lot has changed in a sense. So I think the topics and the building blocks are the same. So we obviously exchanged for a couple of years. We have internal big conferences. We'll be here in Berlin next week for our global summit, also to exchange on these things. We've launched different initiatives. It's a lot about aligning in a sense, but it's also about execution, right? So in terms of getting from the grassroots to the execution to drive a real value. And in that sense, we also derived 3 projects that go beyond the pure knowledge exchange and alignment that we would want to take a look with you all.
So there is a need for a strong demand, I guess, for collaboration, but you have to structure that collaboration in a meaningful way. How are you doing that?
Yeah, so we basically structured this into 2 areas, right? Knowledge, AI and data, and we'll get into each of them separately. So around knowledge, obviously in such a big organization with such a diverse amount of stakeholders and companies, right, that was only the highest level. Obviously within these divisions there are more and more companies that have very different needs and expertises and data assets and technology. The first thing, or one thing that we looked at is obviously how can we actually foster knowledge exchange. And how we go about it was in the inception of this a couple of years ago, how can we actually build some type of internal LinkedIn, right, to connect people across divisions, to share knowledge across divisions. So the idea was how can you actually have a platform that enables technology and data experts with that framing about what types of projects, what types of technologies are used across all of these divisions, and even within these divisions, there are a lot of companies where you need knowledge exchange. How can we connect all of these people together to then actually drive the benefit? This is a platform we've been running for about 3 years now, and we have about 10,000 tech and data experts which are registered to the platform, 2,500 monthly users, and this is actually a self-driven community. So people can actually come together, align on specific topics, they can define their own communities, host their own events, webcast, all done on that platform. And this has been very successful and growing to actually have this type of grassroots enablement without any overall content structuring, but actually allowing users to collaborate. This is something we did for technology and data, and the other area that we ventured into is now also content. So we now have also a Bertelsmann content collaboration platform, which is not only about technology and data, but rather the content aspect of our overall business, which is quite large, as you might imagine.
And you're now extending this platform with AI features and capabilities.
Sure, there's already an agent on there, so it's continuously expanded, obviously, with all the work that we are doing, because the longer you run it, the more content is there, so the discovery becomes more complex, so we also need agents there. So that's obviously a topic we've been working on long. It is actually, I think, already live. There is already an agent interface on this platform present.
So with all these people working on these things, and you have to deal with a lot of data, how do you organize this data platform to make it secure, to make it compliant?
Yeah, so the other big topic is obviously data in all forms or shapes. Right, so you might imagine with all of these different businesses, we just out of the media sector, right, and you just saw how important data there is, I guess. I just saw a bit of glance, right, first-party data and all of that. So when we looked at the data topic, we obviously needed a bit of structuring what needs to be done. So if you let alone look at the German perspective of the Bertelsmann companies, you can see that across the different companies, we actually have a massive amount of consumer insights and specifically also digital touch points to the consumers, right? We have media services, millions of subscribers, both on the classical publishing side and on the streaming side. We have financial service providers, a lot of touch points there. So we actually needed to structure a bit and think about how can we put that data into valuable assets across all of Bertelsmann and drive different use cases. And for that, obviously, 4 things are important. You need to think about what is the technical platform to work with the data. Is it a centralized or a decentralized approach? Obviously, of utmost importance is a proper legal framework, right? So how is the legal structure actually done before exchanging or using any consumer information between different companies? And you obviously need an operator model and some storefront, right, to actually make the potential visible to teams that run projects to actually be able to access that data. And obviously then the end result should be divisional use cases, better use cases, new use cases, improved use cases. So how does it look like from a structure on the high level? So what we basically done is build a consumer data sharing insights platform. So and that works very high level in a way that we basically integrate certain data sources, collect their metadata and what types of insights are available with the different companies, then evaluate which consumers are actually present in multiple Bertelsmann companies, and then basically have a storefront that allows teams from different divisions at first just to have an overview of the potential insights they might get into their own consumers to drive their own use cases, right? Before transferring any data between companies, just to give an overview about the potential to actually see what is possible. And that is obviously then also with data lineage and all of that. So this contains a data catalog. The other aspect that we also did a lot of innovation also together, Ralf, is the general concept of data catalogs, right? So consumer data, consumer insights is obviously one category of data that also needs special treatment in terms of security and regulatory topics. The other important aspect is then also general content, general data, metadata management, and general data assets, which is a general data catalog topic. And Ralph, maybe you can share some insights on that.
Yeah, so the interesting part was when I entered this engagement, it was obvious to me that we need something to figure out where this data exists in these large organizations. And the data catalog was curious. And I'm a fan of having an automation so that we don't need to maintain a lot of this metadata all the time because that gets aged. And so we put an infrastructure in place. We collaborated in this case with Microsoft. And I'm a little bit proud of that we as a team worked really close with the development team and influenced the roadmap of the product. So we actually had a lot of impact. And so also the interesting thing that building on this kind of industry catalog system, a storefront was quite unique so that people can buy that. There's still work going on in this environment. It's a data catalog you will never leave alone because it's always changing. But that's my part. I've been orchestrating this collaboration there.
And maybe another thing to share there. So we already touched upon it on the knowledge platform, right? And I think in one of the prior and maybe many presentations here, obviously, RAG agents were a topic. And actually, if you want to build scalable RAG agents that have a breadth of knowledge available that they can search through and actually give insights into, the only way to do it is actually to have a proper data catalog with proper metadata and then build these systems on top of it, right? So that's something we are also working on it. And I think from the data platform perspective, I think the important thing here is that the platform itself is not dependent on what types of use cases you're running with it. It's also not a central data store. It's actually a process connectivity layer. And I think what also needs not to be forgotten is that you also need to think about taxation in the process, right? You can't just share assets between companies with actually having a proper approach around taxation and pricing, similar to an external client, maybe. I think the use cases, I think, are not surprising, I guess, right? Given our portfolio, we're obviously working with companies to improve personalization, give them possibilities for better customer segmentation, churn reduction in subscription-based services, data enrichment and more audience insights for maybe more advertising-related businesses. So anything around that, and maybe very briefly, maybe an example use case from the media landscape. So you might know RTL Plus, the big streaming services. That is part of Bertelsmann. One of the classical things is how you can improve content recommendations, right? Oftentimes users don't get the right content recommendation, and when the new user signs up for a service, you basically have zero knowledge about that user. So what we are doing with the colleagues is basically they can actually obtain through the platform insights into a consumer that they hadn't had themselves, maybe into socio-demographics, buying behavior, media consumption on other maybe online properties. And based on that, you can actually ad hoc create better content recommendations if you find statistical twins in the existing consumers, and then based on that, show better content recommendation without any actual media consumption on this one service itself. So that's one of the classical things where we're basically building AI models to enable better content recommendation, churn reduction by insights we can actually gain through the big data platform from other Bertelsmann divisions. Yeah.
So are there, you already hit the topic actually, are there advantages and benefits you see in the topic of AI, and what challenges have you been seeing so far?
Yeah, AI obviously is a part everywhere. I think we had this T-Systems presentation that obviously AI is not only Gen AI, but let's focus on that for a moment. Obviously, AI in general, or generative AI, is obviously something that we are closely monitoring and heavily investing into. So this started 2-3 years ago, actually, in this big organization, as you would expect, as some type of grassroots developments, right? So we've seen, obviously, in all these different companies, all these different sectors, people experimenting with the tools, be it also for programming, right? Because we have a lot of IT services also in media creation and all the above. And when we took a look at this, we saw around 200 use cases that people actually experimented with. So the first thing that needed to be done was prioritize, right, to a degree. So in terms of technology investments and knowledge sharing, and that's what we did by structuring the use cases into 4 domains we actually wanted to use. And currently, we actually had the step since the beginning of the year that we actually put this prioritization structure around it, which we call the AI hub now on the Bertelsmann level. So if we look at the domains, this is actually where you see the diversity of companies or businesses that we're doing. We have a domain around news, right? A newsroom of the future, where we have projects that run AI-assisted selections of important news and helping our journalists actually to more quickly, more innovative, actually write articles. So it's not really about replacing humans, it's really about augmenting the workflow. The other topic we have in the music business is about embedding AI tools into content editors to automatically pick the right song for a content reach out in editor workflows. Obviously, in the fictional and non-fictional, mostly fictional business, it is a big opportunity. We did our first tests with AI-assisted creativity. So some of you might know Unter Uns, one of the most popular soap opera formats. The last Christmas episode, the script writers were actually assisted by AI, and we're obviously also looking into generating video, small interstitials, so stuff that actually costs a lot of money that we can replace there. And then also in publishing, content marketing, how can we actually drive campaigns for books much more automated and much more targeted and cheaper. Maybe briefly on the AI hub, we basically identified 3 areas that we want to drive from there. One is obviously domains and expertise, the thing I was just sharing about. These domains are then anchors for knowledge exchanges, right? So you then have exchange groups that actually exchange on topics. One thing is obviously partnership and technical things, right? Where we negotiate licensing models and also innovation cooperations in certain areas that are important to us. And then obviously also co-innovation for certain things where we do prototyping and piloting. And obviously not to be forgotten, enablers, right? We need to think about compliance. We need to think about policy and governance within this big organization. Which tools can be used where for which purpose? And this is obviously one big underlying thing we need to look at. And maybe wrapping up, so the general insights we can share here is that in terms of knowledge, a single organization or a single individual can't know everything, but we are helping the Bertelsmann within the Bertelsmann organization to share that knowledge. In terms of data, if you're the data owner, you obviously need to know what you're talking about, but you need to also be able to operate it and with others. So that's why we define the operating models and the platform. And AI-wise, we will and you will need AI or use AI in a lot of different areas. But for us, the focus is really to try to avoid in this big organization that people try to reinvent the wheel, duplicative contracts, duplicative tech solutions. So that's kind of like our wrap up into the learnings that we had so far.
I think, thank you very much.